so the next tip I have is probably the most important, and if you guys take one thing from this video, it would probably be this one. Hey guys, welcome to a brand new video. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. If you're not, welcome back. Today, I'm gonna show you guys 3 tips that will get you looking from this to this. If you feel like you're feeling every muscle except for your lats on your lat pull down, then this is the video for you. Let's hop right in. All right, now a common question that I get is, hey Sonny, how come I only feel lat pull downs in my forearms? Or why do my forearms give out before my lats? Well, that's exactly what the first tip I have aims to answer. And that first tip is use fingertip grip. Now, let me show you guys what that looks like. In front of me, as you can see, is the pull-up bar. So most of you guys probably grab the bar like this, right? If you're grabbing the bar like this, then you will naturally use more forearm. What I want you to try grabbing is like this. So thumb on the outside and barely in your fingertips. All right, so you might be thinking now, oh, but my fingers are so small. How can they hold on? How can my fingers hold on? Well, your fingers are stronger than you think. And it's like when you use your fingers, you're not using your forearm. You're still using your forearm, just to a lesser extent. So for example, if you look here, I'm trying to grip on my arm with my fingers. This, I don't really feel it in my forearm, but if I were to squeeze it with my palms, that engages my forearms a lot. And when you're using your palm to grip, you're gonna have to squeeze your forearms a lot more to keep holding on to the bar rather than using your fingers, because your fingers are already designed to be like hooks on the bar. So why not take advantage of that? By the way, using your fingers as a hook kind of relates to tip 2, so stay tuned. So there are 2 factors that usually determine how well someone can fingertip grip. That first one is not really controllable. It's actually your finger shape. For me, I think I have short but decently thin fingers, a little stubby, but depending on how short, how long, how stubby, how thin your fingers are, it can determine how well you can use fingertip grip. Because let's say you have really long fingers, that's probably the most ideal. Remember, your fingers are like hooks. So when you hook on the bar, you can use basically only your fingers for the most case and 0 palm surface area, which is what you want. That's the most ideal. But if you have shorter fingers, it might be harder to wrap around the bar with just your fingers, so you might have to involve some of your palm, depending on which bar you use. Which leads me into factor number 2, which is the bar that you use. Now, I have 2 bars in front of me. These are not the only bars at the gym, but I just want to give you a comparison. So this first bar, as you can tell, has knurling and is rather thin, versus the second bar, which is rather fat and has no knurling, completely smooth, right? So which bar do you think I would choose and I would advise you to choose? Probably the thin bar with the knurling. And this is kind of like a win-win situation because you got a knurling, which already helps you grip onto the bar, and it's thinner, so your fingers can wrap over it more easily. Ideally, you want a thinner bar for your fingers to wrap around. And remember, bottom line is you want to use as much fingertip and as little palm as possible. All right, guys, so the next tip I have is probably the most important. If you guys take one thing from this video, ideally you want to implement all 3 tips. But if you only take one tip, it would probably be this one, because this is a tip you can apply to any back exercise that you do. And it's to lead with the elbows. You can't really see that I'm doing it in this video here because it doesn't really show that much on camera, but you might be wondering, what does that exactly mean? So remember when I said that the fingertip grip should be like a hook on the bar? That kind of leads into the example I'm about to give. Imagine you're going fishing and you successfully catch a fish onto your hook. Is it the hook that brings in the fish or the force of the reeling in that brings in the fish? It's the reeling in, right? So similar principle here. The hook is not the main puller of the movement. In our example, the hook is the fingers and the hand, and then our reel is our elbows. The way to think about this is don't think about pulling with your hands. Think about driving your elbows down, right? All right, so now you might be like, okay, I understand. I forgot about my hands. I got the grip locked down, and I'm thinking about driving the elbows down. Now the question is, where do I drive my elbows down to? So that is a fantastic question, a very important question, and I got a very important answer to that. So let's think about this anatomically, right? So when are your lats most engaged? Your lats are most engaged when they're being squeezed. And how do you squeeze your lats? When your elbows are right next to your sides. You want to think about pinching them close to your sides. That is what will engage the lats the most. If you think about in a squat or in a deadlift, when you squat, you want to drive your elbows down close to your sides. Why? Because that's engaging your lats and building that shelf. On a deadlift, common cue is imagine there's someone tickling your armpit and you don't want them to tickle your armpit. Why is that the case? Because when you cue that, you're jamming your arms close to your sides to engage those lats. Same principle here. When you drive down, you want to drive down to where your elbow is right next to your side as close as possible. That will squeeze the lats to its maximum ability. Now, my last tip tackles the overall positioning you want of your torso when you're doing the lat pull down. And I'll start by saying, yes, you do want as upright of a position as possible on the lat pull down, although there is some caveat to that, so I'll explain that later. Bottom line is you don't want to be horizontal, as you see some people in the gym, you know, they be kind of swinging back, trying to use a lot of weight. The lat pull down, it helps with your lat width, which is how wide your back is, versus your lat thickness or your overall back thickness, which is trained through horizontal rowing movements like rows, chest supporter rows, machine rows, all types of rows, right? And if you're too horizontal on a lat pull down, you're basically doing a row, right? If you're horizontal and you're leaning all the way far back, you're probably using too much weight than you can handle. All right, so remember the caveat that I said earlier with the vertical torso? Here's what I mean by that. Yes, you want to be as vertical as possible, but you don't want your entire torso to be vertical. This is for a couple reasons. First of all, it will feel extremely awkward. You can try it out. It will feel awkward. And you probably won't be able to use as much weight that will actually challenge your lats, right? And the reason is because when your torso is just vertical, your shoulders are not stable and they're not locked. So what happens is when you pull down, your shoulders roll forward, your elbows flare, and you might feel it in your triceps. Now, the remedy to that is I usually like to depress my scapulas, which is essentially your shoulder blades. When I do that, that sets my shoulders in place. So technically, I'm not completely vertical because you can see a slight arch in my upper back, but that's just from me depressing my scapulas. If you're not doing that, that is something that is totally necessary for you to do when doing a lat pull down. Shoulder stability is very important, right? You could get hurt otherwise as well, and it will make you engage your lats better because your shoulders are not rolling forward and you're able to get those elbows close to your sides. And so it's actually a very important tip. So that's what I mean by the caveat. A better way to phrase it is you want your lower back to be as vertical as possible with an arch in your upper back coming from the scapula depression. Bonus tip for you guys, just because I have some extra love for y'all. A common question I also get is, how come when I do lat pull downs, I only feel it here, not my lat, which is this muscle that runs from here all the way down? Why do I feel it in this tiny muscle right here? FYI, here is a muscle called the teres major, which kind of has a similar function to the lat, except it sits above the lat and it connects the humerus, which is the bone in your arm, to your scapula or your shoulder blades, I believe. That really gets targeted by wide grip pull downs. And the reason is when you have wide grip, that teres muscle is being stretched a whole of a lot. Also, simultaneously, when you have a wider grip pull down, your elbows are not as close to your sides as they could be. So I want you guys to guess what the remedy to that problem could be. You guessed it, narrow in your grip. So If you narrow in your grip, usually when I tell people who are just starting on lat pull down, try using a just outside shoulder width grip. When you pull down, since your elbows are right above your lats, that allows you to squeeze them better, more naturally. You don't gotta be going so wide. On most pull-up bars, there's a crease right at the end where it goes from straight to like there's like an obtuse angle. Just because that's there does not mean that that's where you need to grip. So if you have a smaller frame and when you grip there it feels really teres major biased, then just narrow in your grip. Now I'm gonna show you guys all these tips in practice so you can see what that looks like in your newly reformed lat pull down. So first tip, grab it by the fingertip grip, and you can see that I'm doing it here. Once you sit down, you want to maintain a vertical torso angle, with the exception of the upper body being slightly arched by depressing the scapula. You see that? And I pull down, right? When I pull down, I lead with the elbows, and my elbows are close to my sides, and I'm using just outside shoulder width grip. So this is what the lat pull down should look like, as you can see. All right, guys, so one thing I just want to come here quickly and say is that don't think about my lat pull down as the end all be all. Like, don't be frustrated if your lat pull down does not look exactly like mine. These tips just work well for me, and I feel like they would work well for the general population if they implemented them. But everyone's body is different, right? You might be able to grab as wide as possible and still feel it in your lats, you know, like super wide grip because you're a bigger guy maybe, or you might not be able to use fingertip grip as well because your fingers are shorter, stubbier, or bars that you're using are really thick, things like that. Or you might be using it very well because your fingers are super long. You know, point is everyone's body is different, so these tips are here for you to follow. That's what I want to say. And if you guys have any tips for me and you guys think I left anything out of the video, please let me know down in the comments below. You know, I'm always constantly trying to improve as well, so if you guys want to help me out, feel free to do so. And that actually brings me to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys learned something, make sure you comment down below. And if you guys like this video, please make sure you subscribe. If you guys want to see my previous video, which is visiting Illinois' strongest gym, you can click right here. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching.